started. I understand that you have entered races before. What is your interest in serving in this particular seat?
I didn't really think too much about getting involved in this race other than voting for whoever I thought would be the best candidate until January. And it was then that my wife said to me, for a whole year you haven't really talked about politics that much. You've been focused on your business. What are you thinking? And I said, well, I think we're in trouble. I think we're in a lot of trouble. But I also think there'll probably be lots of Republicans step up that will be able to carry the banner, and I can continue to build this new business that I've got. And shortly after that, I found out who was likely to be in the race, and I felt that there was a compelling need for someone else to be in the race, that being myself. And so shortly after January, I think 6th or 7th, we made the decision to get in the race. It was a very late decision in many regards. Usually a race of this size, you need to start planning a year and a half out. You need to start raising money and doing all those things. But I felt very strongly that it was going to take a lot to take Congressman Carney out. He has a reputation for being very middle of the road, moderate, as he's touted. He's been approached even by our former presidential nominee as a potential Republican. I like to say he made his choice. He had his opportunity, and he chose to stay where he was, and that says something about where his loyalties lie. But I really felt that on the political side that it was important to give people a choice. But on the personal side, I have 6 kids, and they range in age from 16 years to 1. And that's quite a spread. When my eldest daughter was 1 year old, I went to a town hall in the Luzerne County Courthouse with my then Congressman Kondrarsky. And he was talking about some new program that he was going to be implementing that was going to create jobs and save the economy. I think it might have been, don't quote me on this, but it might have been water jet technology. And I asked the question, I said, the national debt is $4 trillion. That means that this little girl owes about $16,000 on that. How much more should the national debt go, either number or percentage of GDP, before we say, okay, we can't borrow anymore, we really have to stop? And he dismissed it, said, oh, come on, that's just partisan rhetoric, it's going to be fine, this is going to create jobs, and we'll work our way out of this. Well, now I have a 1-year-old again. My 16-year-old owes $38,000, as does the 1-year-old, on the national debt. And now we're becoming aware in a new way of the unfunded liabilities, the promises we've made that we have no identified cash box that we're going to go to pay. Not just Social Security, which is now well ahead of schedule going into the red. We were 2 years ago talking about 2017 as the date. Now we're looking at this year as the date. Of course, if the economy turns around, that will change. We'll go back into the black. But if the economy doesn't turn around quickly, we're probably going to stay in the red in Social Security. And so we're looking at 100 and some trillion in unfunded liabilities, 12, 13 trillion this year in national debt, and a projection of $1 trillion a year for the next decade. Optimistically, that's what the CBO is saying. They're usually wrong in the wrong direction. And I just feel like I couldn't, a decade from now, say, well, I built a successful business and we were okay, and hand over to my kids a country that is badly in debt and can't sell its debt, and all the issues that we're facing. So, and then finally, my background. I'm a small businessman. I'm a doctor of almost 20 years, and I know something about what's going on at the grassroots level with healthcare. I understand why healthcare is in trouble. Not just that it is. It obviously is. I don't think anyone would contend that everything is fine. But I understand it from the doctor's standpoint. Obviously, I understand it to a certain extent from the patient standpoint, because in a chiropractic practice, you're very connected to your patients. There's not a lot of distance between you and them, and you get to hear their concerns and spend a lot of time with them. And then I also understand it from the small business perspective, having run a small business for 20 years. And I think I've got some insights to that would be valuable for the general discussion.
I want to talk more about, just maybe briefly, some biography questions. You finished high school at 16?
Yes.
How does that happen?
A combination of hard work and good fortune. I had a mother who was a teacher who started a private school when I was in 4th grade. And so I had a private education, and that allowed me to kind of function at a more accelerated rate. When I was a junior in high school, we convinced my parents to homeschool us. And so I finished my junior and senior year in a year, and then went to college.
And Bob Jones University was?
I went 3 years there in a pre-med and public speaking.
What influenced your choice there?
They had a terrific science program, and I wanted to be well steeped in the sciences because I was going into chiropractic.
Okay. And after 20 years, you retired from the practice?
I did. It was sort of voluntary. And sort of just a deep sense of frustration, as I mentioned, about the disconnect between myself and my patients, my inability to really provide the kind of quality care. More and more, the questions that I was asking myself was, how am I going to get this covered, rather than what's the best thing for this patient? What's the best recommendation? And the reason was simple. Patients were saying to me, 3 years ago, doc, you fixed my shoulder. You got it all straightened out, and I really appreciate it. It's bothering me again. I'd like to come in to see you. But my plan's changed. I don't have coverage now, or I have a deductible that's $40 and your fee is $43. So I don't really have any insurance at all. And more, it became apparent to me that was a growing portion of my patient base, and that more and more I was going to be spending less and less time treating patients. And then one final thing
and treating patients and doing what else? Not treating them at all, you're saying, or what? You could see you're going to see yourself spending less time treating patients.
More time trying to figure out how to comply with whatever, whether it be insurance or government. I'll give you an example. In 2004, I was president of the State Chiropractic Association from 2002 to 2004. And part of our responsibility was the implementation of the HIPAA law, which had passed in the 90s and which was being implemented in the early 2000s. And so we, as a professional association, set up seminars all across the state for our doctors. We had about 1,500 member docs and about 3,500 docs total. And we offered a member discount, but invited everyone to come and learn how to comply with HIPAA. And I'm standing in front of our doctors, 150 doctors in our state-of-the-art educational facility in Harrisburg. And I'm lecturing, and other doctors are lecturing, and other specialists are lecturing on how to comply with all these new regs. And it was very frustrating because instead of helping these docs to be better docs, I was helping them to be better bureaucrats, better learn how to fill out government paperwork. And the ostensible purpose of HIPAA was to protect patients' privacy, a good, important thing to do. The problem was that it was far too top-heavy and very, very expensive in its execution. I've read estimates as high as $65 billion. Was the initial cost of implementation in a system that was already under strain, almost a decade ago. And when it occurred to me that we couldn't print the materials for the next class 2 weeks later because there would be so many changes to the regs in that 2-week period during the implementation phase that much of the material or some of the material would be invalid. So we would just wait until 3 days before, print the materials, and then all the docs would sign up for updates. And we would regularly update them on the changes. And it occurred to me, that's what inspired me to get involved in public service in the first place, that something had to be done. The kind of business sense that I had learned trying to run my own business needed to be applied in government where we could say, wait a minute, what are the costs of this? And when we talk policy, I want to talk a little bit about that because I believe there's an institutional change we could make that would help government to run more like a business. That's something that I haven't heard too many people talk about, but I think is an important addition.